begin?
Well, hi. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to The Soul of El-Roaring, a podcast for skiers and riders, coming to you from the Ski Heritage Center Museum of Skiing, located on Wisconsin Avenue, right out our window, on the way to Whitefish Mountain Resort. For this first episode, we're going to share some memories and some highlights from the 24-25 ski season, last season, here locally. And for future episodes, it's our goal to cover all things skiing, going all the way back to the earliest days of skiing up to the present day, and a little bit even to the future. At this point, I should thank our sponsors, American Bank of Montana, with offices here in Whitefish, in Bozeman, at Big Sky, and in Livingston, and the Hidden Moose Lodge, located here in Whitefish on Wisconsin Avenue, just between our location here and the turnoff to Whitefish Mountain Resort. For this first episode, we're excited to be speaking with, from Whitefish Mountain Resort, Nick Polumbus, the president, and Matt Gebo, the director of sales and marketing. From the Whitefish Chamber of Commerce, their executive director, Kevin Gartland. And from OpenSnow.com, their Montana forecaster, Bob Ambrose. OpenSnow.com does forecasts and ski reports for just about every ski resort in North America, US and Canada.
You know it feels so right. It's a bluebird day. Nothing like Friday.
So we're going to lead off with Bob Ambrose, primarily because about this time last year, before the ski season even started, he was hard at work on the forecast for opening and on the climatic forecast for the first part of the ski season, and then he'll go on and talk a little bit about going through the season and what the trends were of the weather and how that related to skiing here and around the region. So.
Well, last year, I did a presentation in the middle of November, and at that point in time, it looked like the signals from the equatorial Pacific that we were below average water temperatures, which brought us into a weak La Nina forecast, at least for the early part of winter through January, so November, December, January. When we opened, I think around December 5th last year, we had a storm the weekend. Oh, no, it was earlier. We opened on a Thursday. I want to say it snowed on Monday, Tuesday that week. And there was fresh snow to be had on the first day. Chair 1 was open. We were able to ski top to bottom, and it was a very, very enjoyable day.
In a nutshell, last season, what stands out? What would you like to forget, and what will you never forget?
Oh, last season was, for what actually turned out to be a relatively low snow year, it was a great skier year. That ended up being the second most skiers we've ever had.
And second to the year before, right?
Second to 2 years
So
ago.
2 years ago.
Yep. So that certainly stood out from a positive in terms of the business. I thought the relatively below average snowfall actually skied pretty well. Base steps never got quite as strong as they typically get. It was a little lower snow level in town. I think people kind of felt that, but we had a lot of good days. So I thought the skiing held up right to the end.
The storms kept coming at a pretty good clip through Christmas. And, this is typical big mountain storms, 2 inches here, 3 inches here, an inch here. We used to call it the miracle inch. You got an inch up top, but it seems like there's more than an inch.
Yeah.
But yeah, And it just continued. And the December average ended up, I wrote this down, and we came out at 105% of average snowfall for the month of December.
We were ahead of the game at that
We
point.
were ahead of the game, and everybody had been pretty happy on the mountain because most of the terrain was open. And then the temperatures in the equatorial Pacific started to become milder, and it dropped out of the La Nina category. So we entered what's called an ENSO-neutral phase of winter, where it's average temperatures there.
And the weather behaved accordingly for about the next 2 months.
We don't know, right?
Yeah.
So it's just an average winter. Well, that's when consequently we went dry in January. January we only received, and this is from my end of the season report last year, 16 inches. And that's the top of the mountain. And that's 44% of average for the month of January, 30-year average. But luckily, February came back, roaring back. We had some atmospheric river events, a couple of major atmospheric river events where we got more than 2 or 3 inches a day. So we ended up, February was a strong month for us. Actually, the strongest of the winters so far last year, at 110%, and we received 73 measurable inches of snow out of the 28 days in February. But March was by far our most productive month of the season. It started off dry. The first week was dry. The first week was warm, if you remember. We kind of ended February. It was kind of warm.
Yeah.
And it was spring. Well, it was spring like on the mountain. And then we got over that 7 or 10 days where it was blue skies and sunny and warm. And then we went into a 3-week period right up to the end of the season where we just kept getting snow.
A lot of snow.
A lot of snow. And we had that 11-inch dump on the 22nd of March, which is still my favorite day of the season. It was a Saturday morning, typical Saturday morning, right?
Yeah.
You're early before everybody else does. Get your spot. And we really did pretty well. What did we end up? Well, let's see. 117% of average in March.
March spring break business is really, the trend there has been, I'd say, pretty positive the last few years and really good this year. So I thought, business-wise, one good year in, thought we finished on a good note. Ski visits and frankly, the skiing was pretty good, thanks to a couple of well-timed storms in March.
Through all that, the December average really kind of killed us at 44%, but we ended up the year at 93% of average.
I guess the thing that stuck out about last year, in looking back at maybe the last 5 or 6 years, is we had great snow. We had good snow from the beginning of the season to the end of the season.
Highlights? Or lowlights?
Well, you'll get into it. Chair 2 was obviously a low for us, just the timing of that project.
Yeah.
Tough not having that at the holidays.
Yeah.
Other than that, I thought it was a pretty good winter. Again, skier was its business.
Right.
It's we're competitive about it, so it's nice to have those numbers be real solid and beat the what we budgeted to be, and really beat prior year, because that prior year it was tough.
National Skiers Association years ago, back in the day, used to put out a pretty good summary of skier visitation nationwide with a ton of statistics, which I always found was pretty interesting to follow and draw your own comparisons with. Is that something you pay any attention to at all? Or?
Oh, sure. In fact, it came out just yesterday with some numbers on the season across the industry and military. I think Matt, you read this stuff, but I think the industry as a whole was up like 1.7% or something like that, 1.3, 1.7, less than 2%.
Right.
But it was the second highest year ever for the industry.
So back to the kind of going through the season, when Chair 2 didn't open with the rest of the mountain, the rumor mill went kind of rampant. And so just to set the record straight, what was the deal with Chair 2?
Yeah, the deal with Chair 2 was, you look back on these things with hindsight, and there's a couple different ways you can look at it. When you're in the midst of it and you're getting ready to open the hill, or you got the hill open and you don't have a chair like that, you think the world's coming to an end, and it turns out the sun still came up in the east and set in the west, and we did okay. Our lives all went on, but it doesn't mean it wasn't disruptive and problematic. It was a tough one. But I think that's a Doppelmayr chair, and so we worked with Doppelmayr to, what we were doing is modernizing it. So it's a heavily used high-speed quad chairlift, and those detachable chairs, there's a lot of pieces and parts, a lot of things can go wrong, and their shelf life is limited. And so the project was to modernize that and continue to have a high-speed chair in that location for the next 12 years for a much lower price tag.
Right.
Than you would be putting a new.
Yeah, building.
Right. And what we learned is these big lift manufacturers, there's a reason they don't modernize chairs very often, and they don't recondition chairs. They like to install new ones.
Right.
And so it's challenging to get the support you need. And it's not to put that on them, but we ran into some hiccups that we needed some assistance with, and it was just, there was a schedule to get on to get that done with. And it was parts and labor and help that we were relying on that was just a little slow to come.
There were some mechanical issues, as you and I have talked about, with a couple of the lifts not being quite ready to go, and then having some mid-season issues with one of the other lifts. Fortunately, we have a large enough mountain, and we're no longer a 2-lift mountain, and so if we have problems with one of our conveyances, that we're able to spread out a little bit more. We're still able to use most of the mountain.
Another one that has been an interesting one to sort of stand back and watch through quite a few years is the fate of the Alpenglow Inn property, and that's a story in itself, and probably a whole podcast in itself if you go back to day one with the illegal sale of the condominium units, and I have a whole another story. But so picking it up where we are right now with Powder Peak.
Powder Peaks.
Yeah. So it's how you guys see it?
We see it as a challenged project sitting on our front doorstep that appears to be getting some momentum, which is a good thing. Obviously, I was just barely around to count for the last hurrah of the Alpenglow myself. And then, that came down, and we sat with an empty lot on our front doorstep for a lot of years. So the opportunity to see something come up in that zone is not a bad thing for resort by any means, and it's a good thing. It's had its challenges getting going, but I do think this most recent the iteration that they're actually actively building out now is the best concept they've had for that space, to have a series of smaller buildings as opposed to one massive building. I think it'll serve that space better, and I think it'll fit the resort better.
What would you say to the people who ask, why don't you cut the brush?
I'd say look at the before and after on the skiers right 2/3 of Good Medicine. We worked hard on that last summer, and I think all of us who love to ski in there and ski other parts of the mountain like that got the benefit of a lot of brush cutting got done on Good Medicine last summer. And we'll finish that this summer and keep moving our way east. I'd say that honestly, the eye came off on that ball a little bit, and now the eye is very firmly back on.
Okay.
Including some bigger equipment purchases that'll help us move a little quickly there.
No.
But we'll be dedicating crews to that going forward, just as a rule. we're just going to pick it off.
Well, I think people are going to be happy to hear it, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I like to ski it.
Fun mostly.
Yeah.
We had a meeting this morning, and our slopes supervisor, slopes manager, said that they've already hit 18 acres of lower mountain terrain, some deadfall stuff and some brush stuff to clean up that as Ed smelted out. So they've been pretty aggressive this year. You think about the Good Medicine project that Nick was just speaking about, and that was a project that's kind of been on the docket for 3 years now, and frankly, it's on Forest Service land, so it requires Forest Service approval. There is some habitat of whitebark pine in that area, and with the whitebark pine being a protected species of tree, we also need to be really sensitive to what we're cutting down and where we're cutting it down.
One of the challenges that is certainly not unique to Whitefish Mountain Resort is the whole issue with staffing and staff employee housing, and how big an issue is that to the resort, and how do you deal with it?
Well, we're nothing without our staff, right? So making sure we have staff that are healthy and happy, and housing is a huge component of that, is always going to be on our minds. We currently haven't had any challenges with staffing per se. We all had some challenges coming out of COVID. The whole world did, as you alluded to. In the last couple of cycles, seasonal, cycles, be it summer or winter, we've been good with staffing. We haven't come up short-staffed. The same goes for last winter and for this summer that we're going into.
Well, and by that, the ultimate definition of that would be there's nothing that had to stay closed because there were no employees to run it.
True, but I would also say that even better than that though, like the jobs that we have posted are filled.
Right.
And so I do think that the housing issue is real, and I don't think here in Whitefish we're at the degree of a problem that you see in other parts of the West in the resort industry. The Jacksons and the Park Cities and the steamboats. To throw out a few.
A lot of Colorado.
We're not to that level. Do I think there will come a day where we get to that level? I think we'd be foolish to think that that's not going to happen. I think back to marketplace dynamics, I think it's going to take the next run up in this area of the real estate market to really put that in front of us. So we kind of have an opportunity as a community, and there are some good initiatives happening that we're participating in to make sure we've got a plan for if and when things go a little crazy again. We've got a fair amount of housing that we already provide, mostly to accommodate our J1 visa program,
Right.
Which has been a real benefit to.
So explain what that is again for the.
So the J1 visas are cultural exchange visas. So these are college students from other countries coming here on their off season.
Okay.
Last winter, out of 650 employees, 80 of them were on that program. So it's more than 10% of our workforce.
Yeah.
And they're wonderful. They're smart and they're hardworking for them and engaging kids, and it's real fun. It's pretty unique to that program to have people coming back 2-3 years in a row.
And then in terms of the housing thing, does the resort own properties that you just consider employee housing as a place to put people, or do you work with certain properties in town that you try to have available for people, or how do you manage to that?
Yes.
Okay.
And of course it never feels quite like enough. It's plenty in the summertime, And in the wintertime, again, to accommodate that J1 program, it works perfect, actually. What we don't have a lot of is the type of housing that you could offer to, a manager and a family who has a family or that sort of thing.
Year-round kind of a.
Correct. And I think that's, as we look to the future, I think that's the kind of thing that not only the mountain, but the community has to be ready
Everybody
to
needs, valley-wide.
accommodate.
Yeah. The snow bus, and what a great resource it has become. How does winter sports Whitefish Mountain Resort interact with that resource? And start with that, and then I'll have a follow-up. But
well, we've been involved in that from the start, as you know, and it's technically the Big Mountain Commercial Association, right? That runs the snow bus. So it's not the mountain. A lot of people, I think, believe it is the mountain. It's not. We are a member of the Big Mountain Commercial Association, and some businesses contribute a fixed dollar amount every year, and then some have an assessment. We have an assessment that we have on our sales of products, and it's probably the smartest thing set up that you can think of up there. Obviously our contribution to that is significant. It's the lion's share of that, but it's not us running it.
right.
We do have a couple of managers that sit on the board of directors for that, just to help with running the operation. But it's in good shape financially. New partner with Rocky Mountain with the kind of the sale of Rocky Mountain Transportation, and I think they're figuring things out. But I think committed to the equipment, the buses, and the maintenance and purchases that have to go along with that. So I think it's a great program, and while it isn't the mountain, we're very involved in it,
Right.
and we utilize it. Not only is it good to get people up there and get cars off the road, but our staff uses it heavily too.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal.
I think a lot of people don't understand what an impact it has on summers, and you guys the same thing. It's got to be huge, and the fact that they figured out how to haul bikes,
Yeah.
the same way you figured out how to haul bikes to the top of the mountain.
Right.
That all seems to have grown.
Along with housing concerns in the valley and across the valley, transportation's, I think, goes hand in hand with that. And so I think that as a community, we need to continue to think bigger in terms of snow bus and other forms of public transportation and beyond Whitefish even, to make it all come together and work.
I've been impressed with the way the mountain has adjusted. We've seen the Flower Point lift move. We've seen new lifts come in. We've seen others moved to better access and better disperse the crowds.
Yeah.
I think they've been really pretty adept at doing that. That's a kudo for them.
Probably the only thing that's significantly changed is the decision that was made early on in Foley's ownership and in Dan's tenure was the decision not to try to open for Thanksgiving every year, which seems to have been philosophically going quite a bit in another direction than what people were used to. And do you get feedback about not, if there's enough snow to open, are people unpleasant about it?
I think you'd be surprised, and I'll speak philosophically, Matt can speak more to the specific numbers, but I think you'd be surprised at how we get a little bit of that, but how little we get of that on the preseason end of like, hey, you've got snow, why don't you open? Or even on the back end, hey, you got snow, why don't you stay open? I think one of the contributing factors to why we don't get as much feedback along those lines is how avid our uphill community is. And those folks are just fine with having it to themselves a little bit in that way, obviously with some limitations, just given what we've got, our policy with the Forest Service and how we do it. But I think that helps a little bit. It's a silver lining of that. But we basically target the Thursday closest to December 7th is kind of our target for opening day. And then we target the second-ish Sunday in April for closing. And it's remarkable, skiers are an optimistic bunch, but they also like their summer activities too. So as you get to, we've had plenty of years where we've got our largest base step on the mountain on closing day and a great snowpack. And people lose interest. If the sun comes out a little bit, roads get cleared off in the valley, people want to get on their bikes, people are chomping to get on the golf course, they want to get boats in the water.
Timing is everything in this business. When we used to live in Mammoth, we were fighting to get the resort open by Thanksgiving. And so we were doing snowmaking from the time it hit 31 degrees, until the day it opened. And if it didn't open for Thanksgiving, everybody was shattered. We don't do that here. We have a scheduled opening. We schedule that opening the first week of December. And some years we are taking lifts up to the top with our skis in back. And sometimes we get a nice snowstorm right around Thanksgiving. And that kind of gets the ground in shape. And then we get another one right before opening day. And last year, great snow to start the season, continued. It didn't snow really hard during December, but we had enough for the holidays. And then it picked up again in the springtime. And we had snowstorms the last couple of weekends of the season. So it was good skiing, good snow. And that led to, if not a record, then a near record in terms of skier days, over 500,000 skier days last year. That's impressive for us. And no matter what the division of local versus travelers is, that's a nice mark. 500 skiers is a lot to deal with. And I thought the mountain dealt with it very well.
If you could look back at what you said last November to expect when April came around, I guess, were there any surprises, and where did things go in a different way than what you expected?
Luckily we have a really great crew of high-end meteorologists. These guys are mountain experts, and these guys, we do it by month, and it's, it seems a little premature at times, but last year it worked out pretty well. I did a presentation for the Whitefish Sustainable Tourism Board meeting last year. This was in mid-November last year. And, I don't know. Somehow it worked out. It had a much better year than we did the previous 2 years.
Previous year.
3 years even. I think everybody was very happy with how last year turned out.
So just for the record, or so we know, what is El Nino then? Just the opposite with the temperatures?
Yeah, El Nino is when the temperature is warmer than the mean.
Right.
So yeah, the El Ninos are not good to us generally, but there's been El Nino years that, have been anomalies, and we've had good years out of El Nino. But generally it's warmer. We get more rain on the Lord Mountain.
So as you look around the state of Montana then, it seems like the weather from Big Sky and Red Lodge area is always different. Not always. 90% of the time it seems like it's different than what we're getting. Snow cycles seem to run different. Does La Nina affect them the same way, and it's just a different part of the La Nina effect that is getting to them versus us?
It's a good question. Yes, they are. East of the Divide it's almost like two states. It's almost like I forecast two different states. So I break up my forecast. West of the Divide is a separate forecast than east of the Divide.
No matter how much you know about the weather, meteorology, and how much history you have, there's still a lot of ways it can play out that just, like you said, in some of the El Nino years, we're not supposed to have great winters and whatnot, then we've had some. And so it's still not a roll of the dice, but there's still a lot of educated guesswork involved.
It is. And it's, the focus for me is when I do my daily snows, I put out a 3 to 5 day forecast. And then my extended forecasts go out 10 days. Beyond 10 days, it's really difficult
Really
to
hard.
predict the weather. I mean,
Yeah.
you can say a pattern, but we don't know any details.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. What are the parameters of snowmaking at Whitefish Mountain Resort, and and ultimately, where's that going? But just to the person that says, well, why don't you just cover the whole mountain if you can make snow?
Right.
What are the restraints and how does all that work?
Yeah. The components to snowmaking are the equipment itself, the snow guns, power, and water. We're fortunate that we don't need to rely on snowmaking in the way that a lot of places do. Matt and I both worked back east for periods of time, and their snowmaking infrastructure is significant, way more significant than ours, because it has to be. They could be resurfacing 65-70% of their terrain multiple times throughout a season. We're lucky that we need it to get going.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as there's limitations to water. That's a big limitation. The equipment is in the real robust snowmaking systems. The equipment is a lot more fixed than ours. We actually primarily use fan guns that can move, but they can only move to locations where there's power.
Right.
So we're limited in that way. I think the biggest thing that the biggest misconception maybe is temperature. You can it needs to be cold to make snow.
Yeah.
And more advanced systems that are out there, which are really really expensive to install and then really expensive to operate. The technology has gotten to a point where you can make it at warmer temperatures, but it's still.
But it's not. It's pretty marginal.
It's pretty marginal. And by warmer, I mean warmer than like 23.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, you look at humidity too. That plays a factor for sure. Wet bulb is the kind of meteorological term, if you will. So those factors kind of come in, and the reality is, like, you look at this past year, and it was not cold. Late fall, early winter, it was not cold. Our snowmaking system is about the high end of where you want to be, functionally, optimally, 23 degrees.
Well, and the other part of that too is, somebody sees it at 20 degrees on November 1st, but we don't open for 33 days, and we look at the forecast and see that it's going to be 50 the next week.
Why aren't
So,
they making snow?
yeah, we could make it, but then it's just going to melt. So, trying to be as efficient as possible with resources and human power and staff's time and effort. Obviously.
And you need a window of time, right?
Yeah.
You need more than
a
two
couple
cold nights.
Yeah, exactly. A couple cold nights, great. But
Well, it's pretty cool too. A new feature on our for those real geeky people out there, like the snowmakers. We have a new column. It's called wet bulb temperature, and that's what snowmakers look for, is a wet bulb temperature.
Cool.
And so we'll have favorable ratings for snowmaking at each resort. Between 22 and 27 degrees, and so that just started this year, and I'm sure so many resorts use open snow now for their planning purposes and staffing purposes, and making snow and grooming, and
For anybody that's paying attention or missed paying attention at some point, it's opensnow.com.
fell asleep.
No, not fell asleep. Their phone rang, whatever. But what we're talking about is opensnow.com, and from there you can get to all the places that you were referring to.
And we have a free trial. There's a free trial offer. You can sign up, see if you like it. There's ways to utilize that information. There's 3 different tiers. There is actually a free app that just gives you the basic information. And then we got the trial, which you get to use the all access pass, and it's $50 for a whole year for an all access. And then, it's well worth it.
Corporate philosophy, the Winter Sports Incorporated philosophy about the the multi-resort pass programs, the Epic program, the Icon, and how soon are we gonna have that?
See me packing my house. You'll know it's inevitable.
You know what, it's actually really kind of interesting, fortuitous, and some luck and some choices on our part that have led us to a really good place here. There's starting to be a little bit more outward blowback on those products in the marketplace. 18 years ago up there, we sat down and said, you know what, we're going to be about service and we're going to be about value. And we're just going to focus on those two things, and that's going to kind of guide what we do. And we're going to focus on our independence, and we're going to provide a genuine, authentic, independent experience that people can afford. And we're going to be nice about it, basically, is what we said we were going to do. And putting that stake in the ground, or those stakes in the ground, set us on a path, and we stayed diligent about it. So we were working so hard to be independent and affordable on our own, and the thought of joining a path like that
Would just counter.
completely hypocritical,
Yeah.
with the program.
Yeah.
And now we're we've been growing on our own merits.
Right.
So it's not like we're one of those ones that's like, well, we don't really love the idea, but we need the skiers. We're doing just fine, thank you very much.
Right.
And that is our push.